I want to share my experience dealing with Santander Consumer. Back in the summer of 21, I financed a car through Santander Consumer. $299 bi-weekly was a decent deal considering I was determined to rebuild my credit. At the time I was making good money, so it wasn't a problem. For a year and a half all was mostly well. In the summer of 22 I started having problems because of an injury that cost me my job. When I went to see the doctor about my injured leg, I was diagnosed with two hernias. I would need surgery. Unable to do the physically demanding work anymore, I went to lighter and lower paying work. At least that was the plan until after my surgery. This is when things started to get sketchy, and the stress started to build. I was still holding on and able to make payments. I was hit with the Rona. It was mild, but still kept me at home for a little over a week. I didn't want to pass it on to anyone else. This was also when the savings dried up. I had the deferrals available. I wanted to use them when I went for my surgery, but I had to use them early. For the remainder of summer and through the fall, I got things under control and somehow, I managed the payments. My work ran out just as I went for my surgery. I actually thought I could manage some kind of light work after my hernia surgery. No. After my surgery I was unable to do anything. Work was not an option. Leaving the house was hard on me. This is when things started to fall apart. I was out of everything. No money. I sold what I could, and borrowed what I could. I even tried a GoFundMe. I could not pay rent and lost my home. I had to go back to family. Still, I managed to make the car payments. I knew that even if I lost everything else, the car would be my only hope for rebuilding. I put everything I had into saving my car. My girlfriend of more than 10 years also had to go back to family. I should add that during all this, she was also putting everything she made into trying to hold on to what we had. However, she had work problems of her own. Her work became unstable. Still, she came through whenever she could. I had to come up with something new after I recovered. With what little I had falling away, it was DoorDash. It paid weekly and I could work as much as I wanted. It was really my only option. Because I was basically broke at this time, I could only work until I ran out of gas. Then I had to wait till the weekly payout. It was enough to keep the car running. However, after 2 weeks I was eligible for the fast pay option. This meant I could get my money every day and go indefinitely if I wanted to. I had to add my bank card info into the app and wait a week for it to work. It didn't work. Now I was stuck in a position where I was barely making enough to keep going. Every day I contacted the support to fix this problem, constantly thinking it will be fixed any day and I'll be good to go. That is another story. Still, I was managing payments, but I had to borrow until I could borrow no more. The stress was starting to set in, and it was becoming severe. I was falling behind on everything else. I wasn't able to pay the cell bill, and I lost that. Luckily, the car had Wi-Fi so I could still continue for as long as I had gas. Then I'd have to wait again for the weekly payout. The stress continued to mount and I started missing the car payment. I managed to recover the first missed payment. It took roughly a month and a half before the payment issue with DoorDash was fixed. By this time I fell a payment behind. I was in contact with Santander letting them know what was happening. I should add that this was right before Christmas. That only made the stress worse, but the pay issue was fixed in time for Christmas. Managed to make $60 to buy gifts for 3 grandchildren. However, I was finally good to go. The fast pay was working so I could work every day and start to catch up. I still had to catch up though, and I was getting there. I thought I was free and clear, but it didn't turn out that way. Days after Christmas a series of events came together, starting with having to rush out to Slave Lake, and ended a week later with a funeral. I'll spare the details, but this held me back another week. I will say, however, that most FN cultures' funerals involve wakes that can go for 2 nights. At this point I was now 2 payments behind. I had managed to get through all these things and was finally ready to get to work. I had my work cut out for me, But it was doable, and that's all I needed. And I was off to the races. Or so I thought. Yes, I did finally get a start. I had to start catching up. That meant to payments of $299. Add to those payments, two NSF fees of $74 each, just to make it that much harder. I thought I was on my way. I had hope. I had even managed to pay the first NSF fee, hoping that Santander would see that I intended to get things back under control and I was on my way. They shut the car off. After all that I had been through. After all that, I was finally on my way to getting on track. I had lost everything else. All I had left was this little car. It was all that stood between me and rock bottom. You might think that the reason for them shutting your car off would be so they can come and take it. No. They let it sit and give you time to catch up on payments. I had been keeping them informed the entire time. I made it clear that I borrowed all I could. I explained the issues I had. I even told them that I was finally at the point where I could finally catch up. I was helpless, unable to save my car and coming up on missed payment number 3. At that point, they said that if I could come up with one payment, they would defer the other 2 and waive the NSF fees, leaving me with $260 to come up with. This sounds like a super generous offer. It sounded like a lifesaver. Only $260 when you take into account I already paid one NSF fee. It was a simple matter of a couple days' work and I was home free. Just turn the car back on and we're good to go. They refused that part. They knew that the only option for me to make that money was to use the car. They would not turn the car on. Santander's generous offer turned out to be a sick joke. It was almost like they were taunting me. To be so close and then denied. It was beyond infuriating. It was just one simple little thing, but they just wouldn't allow it. I desperately scrambled to get any kind of loan for $260. A payday loan, a personal loan. Everything was already exhausted, and they knew it. But one simple thing would have fixed it all, but they refused. I don't know how credit checks work, but when I was trying to find a loan, one of these companies knew what I had spent on my car. More than $10,000. Little if anything had gone onto the car after a year and a half. You would think that for all the money they were making off of me, they would want to keep making money. You would think that after all that, they would do that one little thing that would let me fix all this. It's not as though it was their lives that were falling to pieces. In the end, they took the car away. I desperately tried everything I could. They let me think I had a chance, while they made it impossible. Turning the car off only did one thing. That was to make it impossible for me to save it. I'm now in ruin. I don't have so much as bus fare. I have nothing left. I don't have it in me to start over for. I don't know how many times I had to start over. I wanted more than anything to avoid that. To add insult to injury, they're still taking payments from my account. There's nothing to take. RBC not missing a chance to make things worse. For the first time for as long as I've dealt with them, let the payment go through as if I had an overdraft. For nearly 10 years I dealt with RBC, and they have never let a payment through when the account was empty. 2 weeks earlier and it would have been heroic. That error would have saved me. But now, they're giving money away that I don't have to people who have no reason to take it. This was my experience with Santander. You can take my story for what it's worth.